Hello, everybody. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're all okay. My name's Rosie, and I'm going to teach you how to make some greetings cards today. Now, the idea is that this card can be used for any occasion. You can do anything you like with it, but I'm kind of going to try and do it a little bit Easter themed, just in case you needed any Easter card ideas. But it's a very loose Easter theme. I'm kind of just going to put an egg on it and then loads of other stuff. But the really great thing about this card making session is that a lot of the materials that I'm going to use can either be recycled or they're fairly cheap. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to essentially do really easy collage, but it looks super, super effective. So there's lots of different things we're going to do. It just involves essentially lots of cutting and sticking. But if I teach you the sort of shapes and the ways in which I cut and stick, hopefully you'll be able to recreate it for very little money. So to begin with, I'm going to get myself some craft card. Now, you don't have to use craft card. You can use any card you like. You can use whatever colour you like. I'm going to switch between screens, by the way. So I'm here, hello, and then I've got my paper here so you can see close-ups. So craft card is essentially brown card. You can get it from anywhere. It's fairly cheap. You can get craft card that is already in greeting card format. In fact, I'll show you. I should have got one of these ready. So you can buy packs of greetings cards that come with the envelopes. So these ones are pre-folded. You can get a pack of these, I think from the works. I think I got a pack of maybe 20 or 30 for like £3, something like that. So if you want to go all out and send everyone you know an Easter card, then this is what you want. Go to the works and get them pre-made. But I've just used a piece of A4 craft card, which has come in a big pack like this. This is from Hobbycraft. I think this is maybe £3 or something. You get 50 sheets, and then I've just folded it in half so that it creates a card. So these ones are a little bit smaller, as you can see. Doesn't matter what you use. It doesn't matter which card you use, which colour. I just like the craft card. I like the effect it gives, and I like that the different collage we'll be doing today, this card will make it stand out using the brown. So I've got myself my craft card, and this is what's going to create the front. I'll put the big pack to one side. Now, this is where it gets fun. Hopefully you can all follow with me, and I will try and give you some different variations as we go. So please ask questions if you want to. If you want to know if there's alternatives for what I'm showing today, there's loads of different ways around it. So the things that I've got, you might not necessarily have, but that's okay. There's ways around it. So I'm going to, let me move these out of the way. These are some examples, by the way, of the sort of thing we're going to do today. These were Valentine's Day based ones, but we're going to essentially copy this style, and you can apply it to absolutely anything. So I have got a selection of different papers. I'm going to show you which ones I've got. You might not have all of them, but they're all really cheap, basically. So probably the most expensive one that I've got is this glitter card. So this is £3 from the works, but it's really beautiful, and you don't use much of it for the cards themselves. So it's worth it for the price in the sense that you use very little. So you're going to get a lot for your money. And this just comes with, I've used some of this already, but it's beautiful, glittery card in lots of different colours. Now, if you don't have glittery card, that's absolutely fine. You could use normal paper that you've maybe stuck glitter to. You could literally just throw a load of glitter and glue onto some paper to get a glittery effect. You could also think about using sweetie wrappers and foil, things like that. So this might be a good idea for after Easter. So once we've had Easter, keep hold of all of your wrappers from your Easter eggs, and you could use those instead of your glittery card. So if you were thinking about making birthday cards after Easter, then don't throw your wrappers away, because they're always going to be useful. So I've got my glittery card. I've also got, so this is a great shout. I basically go to either car boot sales or charity shops and buy old books So you can get them in any charity shop, and they're usually really, really cheap because no one wants them because they're old and they're stories that people don't want to read anymore. So I think this was maybe 50p, and this is a whole book. So you can, again, you get a lot for your money here. So this is a really good way of using a recycled material. It's something that nobody else wants, but you can get loads of beautiful collage out of this. So I've got myself an old book. It's an old Vanity Fair. I didn't read it. I've ripped it up. Sorry. I've also got this now. This is another thing that you can get in charity shops and in car boot sales for really, really cheap. And this is sheet music. Again, it's the sort of thing people don't tend to use anymore. You might have some knocking about if you ever played music at school or at whatever. You might have some of this hiding away somewhere. But this makes for beautiful collage when you cut it up. And again, you get a lot for your money. So this was £1 from a charity shop, and it's got loads in there. And you can see I've already been cutting bits out of it. So there we've got two different recycled paper goods that were really, really cheap. The next thing that I'm going to use, again, this is not essential and there are ways around this. So this is tracing paper. So again, this was from the works. This was £2.50 for a whole pack. And tracing paper is beautiful because it's sort of translucent. It's really nice to write on, and it's really good for layering because you can see the things behind it. So tracing paper is going to be part of this. If you don't have tracing paper, or you don't want to go out and buy any because you don't think you're going to use it, then you could use greaseproof paper from your kitchen because it has a similar effect. It's slightly see-through. It's nice to write on. It's easy to rip. So greaseproof paper is another good shout if you don't have tracing paper. Although if you're not the main cook in the family, then make sure you ask before taking people's greaseproof paper. So the last thing that I've got here is just old magazines. So these magazines have been given to me by my mum. She just gives me all her old magazines because she knows I'm going to rip them up. So if you know anyone that buys magazines, I don't buy them anymore. They're too expensive for me. So I just get people to give me them. So again, it's a really nice way of reusing something that would otherwise just be thrown in the bin. Any magazine will do. The other thing I could recommend if you don't have someone giving you old magazines is to pick yourself up one of the free ones that you get in the supermarkets. So I know Lidl and Aldi especially always do a little booklet, don't they, with all the food in. They're absolutely fine. If you pick one of those up on your way out, that will work fabulously. And again, you can read through it and then you can reuse it for your collage, which is really fun. So they're my magazine cutouts. The other thing that you might want to use, I've just got some, I've got a notebook here that is, I don't know if you can see this, but it's gridded. So if you have any old notebooks that are not just plain paper, then this will be really useful. Not essential, you can use whatever paper is knocking about. I think generally speaking, the way that I like to make stuff is if it's got a bit of texture to it and a bit more to it than just plain paper. So actually scraps of paper that would otherwise be discarded are perfect. Old letters, stuff that comes through the door that you're otherwise just going to throw away, that's all going to be really, really useful, and I'll show you how to use it. So I've just got some gridded paper from a notebook here, but you could use whatever you like. It could be old paper that you've written shopping lists on, doesn't matter. We're going to rip it up anyway, cut it up, we're going to draw on it, and it's going to look more beautiful because it's been used. So what next? I think we should start cutting up. So I've got my card here. Is anyone doing this as we go along, or are you going to watch and then try later? If anyone's doing it as we go along, then get your scissors ready because we're going to start cutting things up. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out an egg shape because I'm going to try and make this loosely Easter based. So what I've got over here, I should have somewhere, I pre-drew it. Most people are watching first. I think that's very wise because I'm all over the place, throwing bits of paper all around. So I've chosen this beautiful purple glittery shimmery card, and I have pre-drawn an egg on it just for time purposes, really. I don't know if you can see that. There you go, look. So you've got an egg shape, which I have kind of made so that it's not too big, not too small on the card. So you want to use your card as your kind of measuring. This is your ruler for everything, essentially. You don't need a ruler. You can just use your card so that you know how big things are going to be, how wide things are going to be. So I've drawn an egg with pencil on the back of the glitter so that I can see it. And then I'm just going to cut that out real quick. And the great thing about this is that it doesn't matter if you go wrong. It doesn't matter how many times you draw the egg. As long as you're happy with it before you cut it, then you're good to go. And that's why this glittery paper is quite good, because you can draw on the back of it. So there's your egg shape. That's quite nice. That goes in the middle. In fact, I'm just going to, I don't like this little corner. Look, I'm being a perfectionist. I'm just going to trim around the edge of this corner so it's a bit similar to the other side. That's better. There we go. So the first thing I would recommend as we go along here, and you will see why, is that whatever I'm cutting out, I will not stick anything down until I'm happy with where everything's going to go. So I'm going to do lots of cutting now, and then we'll do the sticking afterwards, because we might want to layer things slightly differently. Yeah, template is a really good idea, actually. I'm quite good at drawing Easter eggs because I've done lots of Easter crafts for my children, so I've had to draw them over and over and over again. But yeah, another great idea is drawing around things. If you're not doing an Easter egg and you're doing just something, you're just doing a card, then drawing around a plate or a pot to get a circle is a great idea. I do that very often. So yeah, templates are great. I don't know what Easter egg template you'd use, but I guess if you had like a picture of one, you could cut that out and then draw around that. So we've got our glittery egg here. Now, where are my examples? Here they are. So there's a few different things I like to do over and over again, and I use them very often in my collage cards. And they're really, really easy. So there's four actually. There's 4 things that I like to do, and you can apply that to absolutely any card that you're making. One of the things is a wave. So you can probably see on here there's a few waves. One of them is a zigzag. Another is a heart. And then the last one is foliage. So I'll do foliage last because that requires some drawing. But anyone can do this. If you've got a pair of scissors and loads of paper, anyone can cut out a wave and anyone can cut out a zigzag. That's why this is so perfect, because it looks great, and it looks like you're an absolute master of paper cutting, but it's just waves and zigzags. Super easy. So I'm going to basically kind of replicate this idea onto here. So I'm going to use varying different papers. So some of the ones that I've shown you before. Just bear with me while I'm going through my pile of stuff. So I think I'll probably start with a page of Vanity Fair. How about that? So we'll start with chapter 3. Rebecca is in presence of the enemy. Let's rip that out. Don't need that. So these books are great if you buy a little old book from a charity shop, because they're often a very similar size to a card. So all that you need to do is, if I move this Easter egg out of the way so you can see, all that you need to do is place it against your card, and this is where the ruling comes in. So this is where it ends. So I'm literally just going to fold it so that this piece of book page, that wasn't a sentence, was it? So this book page becomes the same width as the greetings card. So if I turn that over, look, that's the same width. So then all I'm going to do, get my scissors. I'm probably going to lose my scissors quite often during this session, I imagine. Draw the paper. So if I cut that edge off there, then you're left with a bit of book that is the same width as my card. And then essentially all I'm going to do is cut some waves out. Now what you could do is you could cut waves out of all of this, so you've got a few, and then you could choose your favourite. There's a few different ways of doing it. You might want to have one that sits at the bottom, in which case you're going to keep that straight line. So I'll do that to show you first. So I'm literally going to go up and down and up and down. And it doesn't matter. This is the first one, so it doesn't matter what it looks like. Beautiful. So there you've gone up and down, up and down. And then that could sit at the bottom because it's still got its straight edges and its corners. So you've kind of started to frame your card, which is great. But then now you've got this lovely wavy line here. you could simply replicate that and get yourself a little wave. You could go a bit off kilt and go up and down at a slightly different rate, which I'll do now so you can see what happens. So I've gone up slightly more and then down slightly more so that you have a bigger wave in the middle. If that makes sense. So there's your kind of big wave. Now that could sit in the middle of your card quite happily, and it will, because it's been cut from this one, it fits quite nicely with that. But the other thing you could do is you could turn it over so that it goes the other way, and then that might have a slightly different effect. But it's up to you really. We're just playing. This is the great thing about collage, is that it's just experimenting, and in the end, when you stick it all down, it looks great. Doesn't matter what you did. So we've got a couple of waves there, and you could continue with that. The other thing that you could do is you could do another wave at the top of the page here so that you're framing the whole card. I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to show you what it would look like. So there, you could stick it at the top there, and then you've got your top and bottom. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something else at the top, different piece of paper. So that's how you do a wave. Really simple. It's just about making sure that the width is there and deciding whether you want your straight line at the bottom or the top, or if you just want some random waves. As long as the width of the page is the same as the card, you're laughing. And even then, if you get it a little bit wrong, that doesn't matter either, because there are ways around it. Alternatively, so say you cut your wave and it's not the right width, say you cut it and it's a little bit too short or it's a little bit too long, you could just point it at an angle like this. So you might sit it there like that, and then you could literally draw with a pencil a line here. In fact, I will do that so you can see. You could do a line here and a line here, and then if you chop them with your scissors, then essentially what you'd get is this effect. If I fold it so you can see. So you'd have a diagonal wave going across the corner, which looks really nice. So even your mistakes can be turned into something beautiful. So we've got a couple of waves there. Now I'm going to move on to a different bit of paper. And at this point, I might stick my egg. I'm not going to stick it literally, but I might just pop it on here just to see how things are looking. Just say, oh, maybe this wave's going to go over the top of it, or is it going to go under it? Who knows? We'll see. Let's try some other things first. So what else have we got? Let's look at some magazine cutouts. So with magazine cutouts, what I would recommend is you want to look for things. I've folded a few bits down, so I've picked some bits already. You could use the writing. If you don't have any old books, then the writing is great for the same thing that we've just done. But what I tend to look for in magazines is kind of like foliage, landscapes, flowers, food, anything that's bright and poppy, but not like a single thing. If it's a single thing and then you cut it out, then that becomes part of it, and it might not be right for the context of the card. So for example, if you were making an Easter card and you saw a picture in a women's magazine of like a lipstick, if you cut the lipstick out and stick it on the card, it might look a bit weird. So this is why I go for sort of general landscapey type pictures. So this is a really good example. So this one here, which is like a really fancy table with loads of lovely things on it. But when we cut that out, it will just be a series of colours because we're not using certain points of it. We're just going to cut bits out of it. So I'm going to rip that out. Okay. And then also, I'm just going to show you quickly, because I am going to use this flower, I think, is that you might want to use certain images because they might fit. So I did find this flower, which I thought was really nice, and this might work as a bit of background. So I'm going to use my flower in the context that it is as a flower, and then I'm going to use the background of something to cut out more shapes, so waves or zigzags. There's a few others I found in here as well that I want to show you. I might use one of these instead, actually. So this, for example, is really nice. So it's just like a skyline with a bit of a sunset. And really what you're going for is a kind of colour scheme. So if your starting point is a big thing, so the Easter egg, which is purple and glittery, you want to maybe think about colours that will either pop on the brown paper or go with the purple egg. So this would look quite nice because those oranges might look quite nice with the purple. And then also we've got some flowers here, which are quite nice. So you might want to cut those out. But I'm going to stick with the ones I've just ripped out because they're quite nice. But yeah, you're looking at a magazine in a different light, basically. So like this is like a plate with some food on it. But if you were to cut like a very thin wave out of it, you're not going to see the bits of cress or what is it? Salmon and potato hash. Looks really lovely. But if you cut a tiny wave out of it, all you're going to see is the colours that come with it, which is quite nice. So that's why magazines are great. I'm going to show you some other collage techniques with magazines in a little while. But to begin with, I'm just going to do these. So the same rules apply, but this time, I think so I can show you how it works. I'm going to do some zigzags. So for zigzags, where's my example piece? Here we go. So zigzags, I often do this to go, it's almost like to frame the center image. So you can see this is going round this lady here. So you don't want it to be quite as wide as the card. It could be if you wanted it to be, if you wanted it to just go straight along, but I quite like the idea of framing it around something. So what I will do is I'll just kind of, I think I want to use this flowery bit here because it's orange. And I'm kind of looking with my eye and going, well, there's where the egg starts. And I'll perhaps go around to about there. So I'll chop off this edge because we don't want any white. And then we'll perhaps sort of stop. So maybe there. Chop that off. And that will kind of fit around the egg quite nicely. Now, you might want to pencil this in first, in which case you turn it over. In fact, I will do that so you can see. With magazines, it's a bit difficult because there's lots of colours there. So you might not see the pencil. You could give it a try, but I might use this pen. So I'm literally going to draw a zigzag that kind of curves around ever so slightly. So you're just doing a series of triangles. That's quite nice. And then what I will do is I'll do a second line to create that shape that I'm going to cut out. Doesn't help that I'm doing this on the kind of seam of my table. So then all I'm going to do is cut that out, essentially. In fact, this one's quite nice. This other side's lovely with the kind of pink. Any kind of like magazines that have got interiors in are always good because they've got lots of like walls. So like wall space, that is a nice colour, but they have like little bits on there. Because the thing is, you could do this with just plain coloured paper, but this just gives it an extra something. It gives you texture. It's just loads more exciting. I just think this is a much more fun way of doing it than just using normal paper. And especially when you can get your hands on a lot of these things quite easily. Okay, we're nearly there. Now, while I'm cutting this out, I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to stick these down with just a normal glue stick. However, I know glue sticks can be quite temperamental in that they can be quite non-sticky. So you are welcome to use PVA glue if you have access to PVA glue and like a paintbrush, but it's a little bit more fiddly. The other thing that you could use if you've got the time is double-sided tape, but that might require a lot of sticking. Okay, so this is the zigzag piece. That looks quite nice. I don't know if you can see with the detail on the camera, but you've got some lovely oranges and blues in there. And that, what I will probably do is if I move the egg up slightly, then the zigzag might sort of sit around this side maybe. You can decide where your waves are going. Might look quite nice here. I'm going to sit on top though of the wave. There we go. That's quite nice, isn't it? Lovely. So we've got a zigzag on there. We've got a couple of waves. I am actually going to cut this flower out now because I think this will look nice. Maybe underneath the egg. So this will require a bit of patience just to cut around this. I'm going to do this quite unneatly. You might want to be a bit neater if you're cutting out an exact flower. But this is also wonderful because it doesn't require any kind of drawing skill. You don't have to be able to draw pretty flowers to be able to make these cards. It'll still look amazing. So I'm doing this as quickly as I can. Should have done this before, really, shouldn't I? But as I just noticed it, thought that would look really nice. Because it's a Easter card, flowers kind of work quite nicely because it's spring. So that should work quite nicely. So that flower, I might want to sit that in the top corner maybe. Now, do I want it to go underneath the egg? Oh, my head, sorry, my hat's in the way. I was concentrating too hard on where this flower goes. So it could go underneath the egg or it could go on top of the egg. Quite like that it's kind of floating over the top of it actually. And then we might stick the wave and move the egg down slightly. Anyway, this sort of thing is the kind of your creative input. This is what you get to decide on how you lay things up. Right, I'm just going to move some of my rubbish out of the way and move on to the next bit. Okay, so we've got a bit of background, we've got our big egg, we've got a couple of waves. So what haven't we got? We haven't got any sheet music. So I'm going to do some sheet music. And I think what I will do for that is just do some little hearts. I think that would look quite nice. Now, again, if you need a template for this, that's absolutely fine. Or as I said before, you can draw your heart on one side and cut them out of the other. I'm quite well versed in cutting out hearts, so I'm just going to freehand it because I'm a maverick of paper cutting. So with your hearts, what I would recommend is doing varying different sizes. So I think hearts are really nice added extra. That one's a little bit, I just said I was a paper cutting maverick and then I made a bit of a weird one, but that's okay. So if you are doing hearts, then I would say do a few different sizes, going from absolutely tiny to kind of a little bit bigger. And also, if you're doing a selection of hearts, it's nice to do them in different bits of paper. So I'm going to do 2 music sheets there. And then what I might do is do maybe some more glitter. So if I get another bit of glittery paper, here we go. There's a nice bright pink here, so I might do that. Someone's been at it with one of those zigzaggy scissors. If you are freehanding a heart, then I'd recommend always starting on the corner of a bit of paper. So if I can, I don't know if I'll be able to show you this very well, but if I start with this corner and then all I have to do is the bumpy bits of the heart, essentially. I'm going round. This one's quite uneven. I quite like an uneven heart as well. This is the other great thing about it, is that you don't have to be too careful because that's kind of the style you're going for. It's a bit straight edged, so I can just cut around that bit there. There you go. So there you've got a series of hearts. You could do whatever you wanted with those. You could trim them down. So we've got zigzags, waves, hearts. So there's a couple of other things I want to show you before we start putting it together. So one of the things which I'm not going to use on this card, but I just wanted to show you, is again how useful a magazine can be. Now, especially if your magazine is like a fashion magazine or like generally kind of geared towards females. And the reason for this is because you'll often get in the fashion bit pictures of skirts. Now, you can use lots of different things for this, but I just wanted to show you how you can use magazine pictures to make collage. So my example I'm going to use is to cut out skirts on dresses to create a kind of fan effect. So if you find it doesn't matter what they look like, they could be, why have I cut this out? Who knows? But can you see these? I've got a few different ones. So this is a nice sequiny one, and I've got a couple here. And essentially what you can do is cut out the skirt. So all you're left with is essentially like a colourful fan. And if you layer those up, it's going to look really lovely. So I cut this one out. This is a lovely yellow one. So a skirt has gone from just a lovely kind of, it looks a bit like a petal actually. So that's probably quite good for our Easter theme. Cut this one out. This is quite good because she's doing a big kick, so we get to see the floatiness of the skirt. And the same also goes, you can also do the same for like makeup pages. There's pages in makeup that you'll often get like smears of foundation or blusher and powder, and you can cut bits out of those. They often look quite nice. Splodges of makeup make for good collage. So I've got 2 bits of skirt here, and you could essentially kind of arrange them. In fact, you could arrange them with flowers just to like enhance. And you're just experimenting with kind of colours and shapes. So this, if I take this out of the thing, so you've got a flower here, you've got a skirt, so you could arrange the skirts behind the flower. If I cut this big sequiny one out, because she's quite nice, I do like this one, because I like the kind of zigzaggy effect at the bottom here. It works quite nicely. I'm just going to chop her little feet off for the purposes of art. These sequin ones are quite nice because they're a little bit shiny, a bit like the glittery paper. So this would be a good alternative for glittery paper, is if you can find magazines with glittery skirts in. So that's quite nice. So if you're kind of spraying those out like this, you could maybe arrange them in such a way. And essentially you're just creating kind of backgrounds and textures. So in the context of the egg, if I take all of these bits out, just so you can see, you've got your egg in the center. You could decide which bits you want. You could have bits coming out of the egg, actually, couldn't you? That would look quite nice. Oh yeah, quite like that. Quite like the flower there. That looks really nice. And then you could use, so I don't think I'm going to need, you could either have this coming out of the side, or you could have this coming out of the egg as well. That looks cool. I like that. So I might just chop off this bit because it's not necessary. Less to stick down. That looks lovely. I'm really into that. And then I might just pop in the yellow one as well, because that's quite nice. So do I want that at the top? Yeah, I think at the top, if we have them all coming out at the top here. And what I'm going to do, so now that the kind of idea is forming, so I've just done this off, I've not like decided that this is what I want it to look like. I'm doing it as I go. And that's what's great about this, is because there's no right way of doing it. There's no order of doing it. You just go with what feels right and the kind of images and colours that you like with the paper that you've got, and just go for it. And what's also wonderful about that is you do loads and loads of cutting, you're left with loads of extras that you can use to make your next card. So to the right here, I've got all my scraps that I've cut out, but I will still get, if you think like this is like a corner of the sheet paper, I'm still going to get loads of hearts out of that if I wanted to. I've still got this half of the page here that I can use for more waves if I want to. So you don't have to get rid of anything, essentially, just the tiny little bits that are sort of knocking about on the edges. So I'm really pleased with this. These magazine cutouts look really nice, so I'm going to shift those to the top, and I'm going to keep my bottom wave because I quite liked that. That looks lovely. Now, do I still want this zigzag? I guess that's the question. Or would I like a zigzag that's made out of something else? Let's see. I'm going to put the zigzag to one side and have a think about it. I do quite like my hearts, so I'll probably stick my hearts around there at some point. So let's think. There's a couple more things that I want to show you. I'm going to kind of incorporate the two. So before I was talking to you about getting some paper that you can draw on that is not just plain. It can be plain, but if you want to use whatever. So I'm going to use this gridded paper, and I'm just going to show you something really, really simple. So I'm just going to rip a page out of this. I'm really making quite a lot of mess. I'm just going to throw everything to one side and deal with it later. So this is where you're going to need some pens. Let's just shift those out of the way. And I'm going to just put my card to one side of this slightly. So I've got my gridded paper. It's ever so slightly textured in the sense that it's got like lines on it. There you go, you can see that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to do leaves. So leaves is really simple but very fiddly. And there's a few different ways you can do it, but I just want to show you how you can turn normal paper into something quite beautiful very easily. So I've got myself some pens. Doesn't matter what pens, it doesn't have to be pens, it can be crayons, it can be pencils, it can be paint, it can be anything that you can mark make with. So I've literally just got some of my kids' pens to have a go at. Now, I would just bear in mind your colour scheme. This is all you really need to think about at this point, is what sort of colours you want to do. So because I've got the craft card, which is brown, I've got the pop of purple, and I'm going to cut out some leaves. I think I'm going to do a selection of greens. So you want maybe like 3 different colours. You can use more or less. And now this is the fun bit. Essentially, I'm not going to need a lot because I'm going to be cutting out tiny little leaves. So you might want to just do a corner of your paper. I'm just going to scribble on it. It's that simple. I'm just scribbling. So for this one, I'm just doing a series of circle scribbles. And then I might get a lighter green and I might just do lines over it or zigzags. You just want to create a bit more texture. So there you can see you've got like some actual scribbles on a bit of paper. That's what you've got. What else might I use? Let's see, where is that turquoise? There it is. So I'm going to do more scribbling. Simple, simple, simple. Easy. The other thing that you could do, I'm just going to reach over here because I've got some washi tape. So washi tape is like your kind of fancy tape. You can get that dead cheap, but if you've got any of that, or like masking tape, or like anything that you can stick down but rip up. So I'm just going to rip it into sections and I'm just going to randomly stick them on the scribbles. This is very, very abstract and makes absolutely no sense, but it will all become clear. I'm just ripping and sticking, scribbling. And that's why this is so wonderful, is that anybody can do it. Doesn't matter how artistic you feel you are. This just involves cutting and sticking and ripping and scribbling. Okay, so I've just randomly done some scribbles and I have stuck some tape on the corner of this bit of paper. Simple as that. So now what I'm going to do is use this to cut out some leaves, essentially. So you might want to turn it over and you might want to draw some leaves. So I'm going to do some wiggly ones. You can go much more fiddly than this and do much smaller, but it's a lot harder to cut out. And you might just do some normal leaf shapes like this. So I'll just do those 2 for now so you can see them. Sorry, you probably couldn't see me drawing those. Can you see that? There we go. So you've got your wiggly line and your leafy line. You might want to do loads more of this, but I'm just going to, for the purposes of time, I'll just show you these real quick. Now, this is really fun because I can't see what this is going to look like because I'm cutting around what I've drawn on the back. So the reveal will be very exciting. I'm going to cut them out and then I will show you. This one's quite fiddly. Give myself a hard task of doing some very wiggly lines. What I would recommend is if you want to do really fiddly leaves like this, then get a smaller pair of scissors. So, you know, like the tiny little gold ones that you get for like sewing, they're really good for this sort of thing. I have got a pair of those, but I don't know where I've put them. Scissors seem to go missing in our house quite often. They're probably under a big pile of recycled paper. Okay, so I've cut out my 2 leaves. I'm going to turn them over. Oh, you ready? This is exciting. So what you're left with is, you can't see the majesty of it on the camera like in person, but you've got a textured, beautiful set of leaves there. It's not really translating as well on the camera, but it looks amazing. And all you had to do was scribble on a piece of paper. It just looks, I promise you, you're going to have to believe me here, or try it for yourself. Get a piece of plain green paper, cut out some leaves, then do this and cut out the leaves. And I promise you, you will prefer this. It's got so much more life and vibrancy to it. So this is what I would recommend. Really easy, and it looks super professional as well. So often when I'm doing leaves, what I'll do is I'll cut out a selection. So I've got my scribbled paper. Essentially, you've handmade your own paper here, which is very exciting. So you might stick your leaves on like that. You might use some other things that we've used before. So for example, you might use some of your old book. I'm just going to freehand a couple of leaves here. So I think I'm kind of making a little bunch of leaves here. And when we come to sticking it down, I'll show you another little cheeky technique, which is quite fun. Okay, so they look quite nice. Seem to have, like, I'm going a bit jerky on the camera there. Make sure we're back in. Okay, so I've got a few leaves here. So the last bit of paper that I've not used yet is tracing paper. So I'm going to show you tracing paper now. I might add another leaf on here, but I'm also going to write on it. So this is really exciting. So I'm quite happy with this. Am I going to use this wave? Is this wave going to go on, I wonder? I think it could do, actually. I'm going to make it slightly thinner so that you see more of the egg. Just had a thought whilst I'm thinking about where this wave's going to go. There's an alternative to the waves here and the patterns. I have been teaching you how to sort of do it for the width of the card, but alternatively, you could do a series of waves that are the width of the egg. So it would look like that. So instead of sticking the wave down that's going across the card, it's just going across the egg. So you've created a pattern on the egg, if that makes sense. But I'm going to add some writing, which will bring it all to life a little bit. And let's just have a think. I'm still umming and ahhing over this zigzag and whether I want it or not. I do definitely want a zigzag in there. I'm just not sure if I've got the right colours. I'm contemplating doing another zigzag. I wonder what happens if I turn it over. I've got the big black pen on it from where I drew it, but that's quite nice. I think I prefer that because that colour mimics this flower here. Okay, let's go with that. So I'm just going to get some tracing paper. You may want to use greaseproof paper. The only thing I would say with greaseproof paper is I don't know how well it sticks down. So you might have to have an experiment. But tracing paper is fairly cheap. And it's really lovely to work with. Oh, I've got my hearts as well. Oh, goodness me. It's all happening. I might put my hearts on the egg, actually, because they kind of create a pattern for the egg then, don't they? I'm just not sure about this one. I think that's too big. So I might just cut that down a bit, make it slightly smaller. There you go. Got a slightly smaller egg there, heart. So it's all starting to come together a little bit. I am just moving stuff around. So the fiddliest bit is when we start to stick it down, because you've got to do it bit by bit. So I've got some tracing paper. And tracing paper is really lovely to write on. And because it's translucent, when you stick it down, you'll be able to see all the things underneath it. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before, in that I'm going to figure out the width of the card. And I'm going to fold it to the right width. So we did this right at the beginning with our waves. So I've made a fold here. And I'm just going to cut it a little bit because I don't need loads of this. Now I'm just going to chop it into a rectangle so that you can see what I'm doing. So here's your tracing paper, and that's the width of the card. There's a few different things you can do here. The simplest is to just rip it. So you can rip it at whatever rate you want. You can kind of rip it in a wave effect, whatever you fancy. So ripping looks quite nice. You can just stick it on the top there. I might just rip that bit off. I don't like that bit. So again, you've got your straight edge that you could stick at the top. And you've got a lovely ripped effect here. or alternatively, you could do what we did before with the waves. So I'm just going to do a wave and see how that looks. So I've got a bit of a wave there. So I might turn this into a double-sided wave like this one. But I'm going to make it quite thick because essentially I'm going to write on it. So I've got my tracing paper wave here, and that might sit across that bit there perhaps, or maybe more towards the top. But I'm going to write on it. So this is where the kind of looseness of your subject matter doesn't matter too much, because you can write Happy Easter on this, and then it's an Easter card. You could write Happy Christmas on this, and it'd be a Christmas card, even though there's an egg on it. So there's a few different ways you can do this. You can pencil it in first, which I would recommend if you're not used to fancy writing. If you did my modern calligraphy class a few weeks ago, then you'll be an absolute dab hand at this. If you haven't watched my modern calligraphy class, then you can do so, I believe. And that will teach you how to write like I'm going to write now. So I'm going to write along the wave in pencil, and then it means I can rub it out if I'm not happy with it. So I'm going to write Happy Easter, but you can apply this to any celebration or any reason at all. So I don't know if you can see that very well because it's in pencil. I'll try and hold it up. It's quite hard because it's tracing paper, but you'll see in a minute when I write into it. So the simplest way is to just have like a Sharpie, so a black marker pen. You could do this in biro if you wanted. You could do it in whatever you fancy. But there's a few different options. I'll just write this in with my Sharpie first, and then I'll show you what else you can do. I'm going to go backwards now. That's only because I'm left-handed and I don't want to smudge the paper. So if you're thinking, why on earth is she writing backwards? What is this magic? It's just so I don't smudge anything. But because I've written it in pencil already, it doesn't really matter because I know what I'm doing. I'm just following the pencil line. So I often have to write backwards so that I don't ruin things. We have it real tough as lefties. And that's why, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been cutting out with my right hand. And that's because when I was a little girl, I was so sick of using left-handed scissors because they were always rubbish. I taught myself how to cut with my right hand because I wasn't gonna make do with left-handed scissors. So now I cut with my right hand, which is quite exciting. So I'm just going along here. I keep whacking this camera with my hat, sorry. This is quite fiddly because you're having to sort of hold on to the paper as well so that it doesn't go flying. You could always stick it down if you wanted. If you wanted to be really neat, you could like blue tack it down to the table so it doesn't move around. So there we go. We've done our Happy Easter with our black Sharpie. Looks quite nice. And so then what would happen is that you'd sit this over the top of whatever really. So I think it would probably go nearer the top, I would have thought. I don't know though. I'm kind of wondering if we put it across the middle. If we put it across the middle like that, then you're not missing out on these flowers. And then you can always have this wave on as well. And it doesn't matter if that's layered underneath because you'll still see it with the tracing paper. I think that looks quite nice, don't you? I think that's quite pretty. So I think we'll go with that. But just while I'm here with the tracing paper, let me get a bigger piece for you. Let's just use this big bit. If you do have other pens, then you could give them all a try. But I've got these metallic markers, which were £2 from the works, and they're quite nice to write on tracing paper with. So they're kind of like bullet nib, and they're quite nice. I don't know if you can see that. So what I'll do is I'll just write something fancy, and then I'll bring it closer to the camera so you can see. but a nice shimmery effect. It kind of adds something. So you can see that's quite nice and shimmery. So if you've got metallic pens look really nice on tracing paper, but so do just normal black pens. So Sharpies, what's this one I've got? This is like a brush pen. So if you're a modern calligraphy master, then you could use that. They're quite thick though, so you'd have to be writing something quite small. But essentially, tracing paper is really lovely to write on. So any excuse to write on tracing paper, I'm there. So yeah, I tend to write on the tracing paper because I can stick, that's going to be the top layer, and then everything else kind of fits underneath it. But I'm also, just while I'm thinking about it, I did want to add one more little leaf to this bit. So I'm going to use a bit of tracing paper for that. And hey, I mean, you could even just rip it, couldn't you? I was just thinking then, like, this could create quite a nice leaf shape. You don't even need to use scissors. What you could do is you could kind of, there's a few different things you could do with this, with the tracing paper, is if you get a shape that you're quite happy with, you could either fold it. So this seems a bit odd, but I'm essentially trying to fold it down the middle because tracing paper is quite stiff. When I fold it, it's going to have a sort of 3D effect. I don't know if you can see that, but it's going to kind of stay in shape. And then what I could do is just stick down the bottom bit so that this is sticking out. I'll show you that in a minute because I'm going to do that with all of this stuff. So I might stick on there. Alternatively, you could actually draw onto it. Drawing onto tracing paper would be nice. So you could just draw a line down the middle and then just do some lines coming across to make it very obviously a leaf. That looks quite nice. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. There you go. So that might sit, I might sit that at the back of the leaves, but I'm just placing it on top for now because I just want to make sure I'm happy with my collage. So I think I'm pretty much there. The only thing that I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to take one of these hearts away because it's getting a bit messy in this area. I'm going to maybe put one there, but I think I'm going to go with a glittery one. Sorry, wobbling again, headbutting my camera. So I think I'm going to stick the glittery one there. I think that makes more sense. So we've essentially made our card. We just need to stick it down. And that's the fiddly bit because you've got to make sure you're doing it in the right order. So if we think about the way in which this is sitting, the first thing that we're going to need to sit down is this background bit because these have got bits underneath it. So we need to start with that. So this is where it kind of depends how your brain works. It kind of depends the way in which you want to do it. But essentially what I'm going to do is kind of just move everything out of the way like this. I'm kind of just going to move it, see what happens. And then I know that I want to start with these three. So I think this big glittery one's going to be stuck down first. And I'm just going to have to guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the egg so it's on its own. And I'm going to make sure that the placement of the flowers I'm happy with. And then get the egg into place. And then I'm going to leave it like that. And then I'm going to get my sticky stick. Again, if you want to use PVA, then that will stick better. Yeah, Pritt stick can be quite temperamental. So I understand if you don't want to use Pritt stick, but it will be much quicker than PVA because PVA will require a paintbrush probably and some drying time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of lift up the egg. I'm going to move this yellow one out of the way, and then I can kind of make sure that this is in position before I fully stick it down. So I'm quite happy with that. So then now I can kind of stick that down completely. And then I know that this little yellow one is going to be above those two, so I can do this one next. So same thing. Get a load of, now what I should really do is put a piece of paper underneath where I'm gluing, because now I'm just getting Pritt stick all over my table. Never mind, you guys can put paper down. You can be cleaner than me. So again, I'm going to lift up that egg. make sure the placement is okay. I need to move that down a bit so it doesn't hang over the edge. There we go, that's okay, beautiful. So now that egg's going to sit nicely there, and then this guy is going to go in between here. The other thing I would say about Pritt Stick is it's not very good at sticking tracing paper down. I'm still trying to work on a kind of contingency for that, because you can do everything with the Pritt Stick apart from the tracing paper. So you have to be quite tough with it, or maybe stick it down with something else. I've not quite worked it out yet. You can do it with Pritt Stick, it will work. It's just that it's a bit more tricky than the rest of the stuff. Oh, Maureen, that's genius. Take a photo before you start sticking. That's amazing. My brain is not clever enough to think about that. That's very clever. Yeah, so Maureen says take a photo before you start sticking so you know where everything's going to sit. That's such a good idea. I'm actually going to start doing that. Thank you so much. You should be doing the class. You know what you're talking about. You know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, so I'm just making sure that all the things next go above the egg. So I don't think I need to. So the next thing I'm going to stick down is the egg, because I've got to work all of this out. Oh, hello. We seem to have disappeared on my other screen. I'm just going to carry on sticking down this egg because you don't need to see me do that. And then I'm going to work that out whilst I'm sticking. So my other camera obviously has just had enough. Not interested. Okay, so I've stuck my egg down. And then the next thing to do is kind of work out where everything's going next. So let's just see if I can get myself back in here. And then I can, hopefully you can see everything that I'm doing. So we've got the egg down. So the next thing we're going to do is, I think, probably the waves, although I don't know if the hearts, yeah, I think the waves are next. So I'm probably going to stick the bottom one down. Look at me trying to multitask. Very good. Look, we're nearly there. Okay, and then I'm going to enter studio and hopefully you'll be able to see my other camera again. Okay. Oh yeah, she's back. I'm just a bit smaller this time, but you can still see me. So sorry about that. My camera is obviously very tired. Yeah, so double-sided sticky tape would work on tracing paper. The only thing is you will see it. So because it's tracing paper and it's translucent, you're going to see whatever's underneath it. So there's a couple of ways around it. So I was just thinking about this in terms of the taping. Did you see before when I was doing the little leaves, I stuck some like washi tape down onto it to create that kind of collage effect. So one of the things you could consider if you're interested in tape is that you tape down the tracing paper, but make a feature of it. So in fact, what I will do is I'll show you that. So what I'll do very quickly is I'm going to speed through this. I'm going to do it very, I'm not going to do it at the level of I'm not going to be as careful as I would usually be, because I'm going to try and show you this real quick. So I'm just going to stick the hearts down. I might just leave the leaves for now. Oh no, I do want to show you the leaves actually. So I'm going to stick that one there. It's not sticking very well because I'm doing speedy sticking, but you'll get the idea. So I'm sticking my hearts down. So, right, I'm just going to show you this very quickly. So Happy Easter is going to sit here. The leaves, so there's a few things you could do. You could stick them down like normal, which is what I was doing. But the other thing that you can do is you can just stick the bottom bit. So I have literally just stuck the end of the leaf and I'll stick that down, and then you leave the rest so that it's almost 3D. So when you do that, I'm just going to do this with all the leaves, kind of has a 3D effect, because what you can then do is you can kind of curl the ends of them with your fingers or bend them so that they stick up ever so slightly. And then you've kind of got that 3D effect, which is quite nice. There we go. So I don't know if you can see that. I've really just not stuck these down very well at all, have I? Oh dear, I'll just take those off. So you can probably see now those leaves are stuck down and they're kind of, hang on, which way do I need to go? This way. They're kind of like floating at the top here. So you can kind of like, you can touch those and they're sticking out and it has a kind of 3D effect to it. So that's one way of dealing with the leaves. You can stick them all down completely if you want, if you're worried about it getting into an envelope, for example. So yeah, I'll show you this really quickly. I won't stick any more of this down because you know what it's going to look like. Just kind of annoyed that this heart keeps falling off. We're getting there, aren't we? We're getting there. We're nearly done. So we've got most of the elements on there. I'm not going to stick the zigzags down because you don't need to watch me contend with some teeny tiny zigzags and a Pritt stick. But I will just stick this heart down very quickly. We've got everything but the zigzags then, haven't we? So in terms of the tape, we were talking about double-sided tape for the tracing paper, but the alternative is that you make the tape a feature. So if I just reach over here and get some of this tape. Oh. Okay, so I've got some green tape here. And so what I might do is if I rip it into kind of 4 sections maybe, then you could essentially tape it down. I might do really tiny bits, and then you're kind of turning it into like a feature, a bit like those old photographs that had little corners on them to get them in the photo album. And if you use a nice colour that goes with the style, you're also then creating a 3D effect because it's kind of flapping a little bit in the middle, if that makes sense. So that looks quite nice. So that would be an alternative to double-sided tape or glue, because that's all stuck down nicely. And it has that, because there's nothing going on here, it has that kind of 3D effect to it. So I've not stuck down absolutely everything that I wanted to, purely for time reasons, but you've got all of the different collage effects there. So before I go, I will just go through everything very quickly again. So you want your craft card to make your greetings card shape. Other cards are available. Do whatever colour you fancy, but I like a craft card. So there's a few different shapes we've used. We've got the waves with different types of paper. We've got the zigzags with different types of paper. You can draw them out before you do them, and you just need to make sure that you've got the right width for your card. We've got hearts, which are super easy to cut out with different types of paper. We've got our tracing paper, which we'll often do last if we want to write on top of it. We've got our leaves, which we've cut out by scribbling on bits of paper and sticking stuff on top of it and then cutting the leaf around it. And then we've also got collage cutouts from magazines. So you could cut out flowers or skirts or other shapes that you like to create the effect of something. And then we stick that all down very carefully, unlike I did. And then you've got a beautiful collage card that does not cost the earth and was made out of things that would otherwise be thrown away, mainly, and will be absolutely beautiful, and anyone would be so pleased to be given. And there you go. I think that's about it. I think I've done it all. Like I say, there are alternatives for all of these different materials. Do ask if you've got any questions. And it doesn't have to be Easter based. The only thing that's Easter based about this is the shape of the purple glitter and the fact that it says Happy Easter on it. So you can apply this to absolutely anything. I'd love to see if any of you guys have a go. I'd love to see the finished product, because the joy of this is that because it involves a lot of experimenting and mark making and just cutting and sticking, is that it's your imagination, and you can take from it what you will. So everyone's will look completely different, which is beautiful. Thank you so much. I hope to speak to you all soon. Have a lovely lunchtime. Enjoy the inevitable rain. It's raining here in Leicester. And I'll see you again soon. I've been Rosie from Rosie and Ramona, and have a great day. Bye.